Welcome to the Cultivation Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Hamill, and welcome to this episode where we are talking about probably the topic I am the most passionate about and a tool that I have called the failure loop. Again, all of this season is bonus content from the upcoming book, The Life You're Meant to Lead by yours truly, Tom Hamill, that we're making available on our website. We're doing all of those kinds of things. You can order it through Amazon, etc., that sort of thing. But today we're talking about the failure loop. So let's get into it. Every single one of us have failures. That's why I talk about it so often, because we tend to believe or are convinced that in order to truly be successful, we should not fail. However, I believe the very opposite. The only way to be successful is to fail. In fact, Google has a philosophy, I would say a successful company around the globe, one of the largest companies in the world, is how fast can they fail? How fast can they make a product fail? Because that's where they can find the holes, plug them, and then turn it around and make it successful. So, sometimes the very best thing that can happen to us is to hit rock bottom or to have failure, because it forces us to dig deep about priorities, what we're all about, what our focus, what our intent is, comes all to the surface when failure takes place. And as a part of that failure, we give birth to the greatest successes. So I got a couple of things I'll talk to you about from my notes. Again, this is all bonus content that didn't make it in the book. I hope you grab the book. I hope you appreciate it. I hope it helps you in some way, or I hope it at least becomes a cup holder on your coffee table, right? That sort of thing, or nightstand, or wherever. Something to read in the bathroom. But back to failure loops. True success is found through failures, right? That really, and the path, the journey to success comes through failures. And there's lots of examples. There's lots of evidence about this. Maybe you've even heard me use this illustration or this story before, but even the art or the act of working out. When we're working out, we're lifting those muscles. I don't really work out that much or have very many muscles, but when we're working out, literally the whole point of working out is that we are tearing our muscles to the point of failure and then allowing the body to heal them stronger. That's what makes us stronger. Now, none of us like working out, and if you say you like working out, you're a liar or I hate you. Just kidding. But we don't like working out, but we are super impressed by those who actually do it. Just like we're super impressed with those who actually have success. And why do they have success? Because they pursued it through failures. And so it's so important that we understand that it's a principle, it's an anchor, it's really the DNA or the ingredients of success is failure. So if you're failing at something, you are halfway there to success. It's so important that you understand that. Instead of being derailed by that failure, be catapulted, be pushed forward like a steam locomotive engine. You move forward down the tracks because you know that every time you fail, you get closer and closer. And of course, we know the famous Thomas Edison quote that I haven't failed at making a light bulb. I've just found 1,000 ways to not make a light bulb, right? And so we use our failure as a part of our success story. One of the key reasons that failure is so important in our success is because failure gives birth to innovation. Innovation is always found and discovered through or because of failure. Every time you failed at something, you are able to, or it forces you to come up with a more creative, a more efficient way of doing whatever it is that you failed at. And again, this can be applied to everything. Relationships, communication, job, finances. It can be tied to so many things. And part of the reason in the book I talk about the failure loop is that there is a sequence to failures all the time. We take risk, we fail, we learn, we grow, we're successful. We take risks, we fail, we learn, we grow, we're successful. And anytime you break that loop, you repeat history, right? You just repeat it again and again until you complete the failure loop that leads to success. And part of that is that when we fail, it forces us, if we stick with it, if we continue to pursue it, it forces us to be innovative, creative, and efficient, which is so important on our road to success. And every new invention around the planet, whether it's the phone in your pocket or think about the tiny screen that you are either watching me on right now or listening to me from, depending on what device you're using. Think about not that long ago in history, the device that you're holding or listening to or doing couldn't do what it's doing right now. It didn't exist, but the failure or the limitations of those previous devices is what gave birth to the innovation and creativeness to doing what we're capable of doing now. And I will tell you, even though it may seem impossible, the iPhone that we have or the Android that we have or the Samsung that we have that you're looking at and watching and listening and paying attention to right that you're using right now, it has limitations as well. And where those points of failures are, the biggest failure my devices have, I don't know about yours, is battery life. And so guess what? There's innovation that is coming to that right now that's creating everlasting batteries. I can't wait for that, right? Where I don't know if one day we'll have nuclear powered cell phones. I'm sure that there would be a lot of environmentalists that don't really care for that, and probably smarter people than me that say, yeah, we shouldn't be putting nuclear powered things next to our phone, but wouldn't it be nice to have the everlasting, never dying cell phone, right? But the only reason those innovations come to light is because of the limitations or the failure of current technology or current situations or current circumstances. The only reason you're going to get better at relationships is because of the failed moments. And listen, not everything has to be a catastrophe for it to be a failure, right? If I get into a conflict with my children, there's a failure moment. And hopefully out of that failure, I learn to be a better dad. They learn to be better kids, and we grow forward, and we're more innovative, we're more creative, and we're more efficient at our relationship because of those failed moments. Not that the relationship is so damaged it can't be repaired. So try not to look at failures as a forever thing or a permanent thing. It just is like, hey, there's a limitation here. There's a limitation to our communication. And because of the breakdown or the failure of communication, let's be innovative and more efficient at where we're connecting and communicating, whether that's in a relationship with marriage or a relationship with children or a relationship with a boss, right? Those kinds of things. All of those communication failures lead to innovation and creative efficiencies to be successful, but they wouldn't be birthed out of anything but failures. We have a particular spot in our neighborhood that recently got a stop sign on the street, and there was all kinds of petitions and people championing for and talking about, hey, we need a stop sign here, we need a stop sign here, we need a stop sign here. And after years of red tape and bureaucracy, we know how government can be, and this isn't meant to be a bash on government, but here's the bottom line: the system of that intersection was failing. It was failing at providing safety, which is why a stop sign exists. For those of you that hate stop signs, they exist for safety, right? And they exist for traffic flow. There's reasons behind them, even if we hate them, because without them, it fails at protecting people, whether that's pedestrians in a crosswalk or cross traffic of drivers, that sort of thing. Could you imagine how chaotic it would be if we had no lights and no stop signs and everybody just drove as they chose to? Here in Southern California, people tend to do that and ignore stoplights and stop signs, that sort of thing. But that's a whole different topic and show, and we don't cover this in the book. But because the intersection failed, a stop sign went up, because the failure led to innovation and creativity and a more efficient traffic flow for both pedestrians and bikes and cars and all around, right? And so it brought about success at protecting people, protecting drivers, and all those kinds of things. Now, that's just one simple example. You've got the same thing that's happened in your life. You've learned from failures. You've learned from failed homework assignments when we were younger. You've learned from failed communication when you got into a fight with a best friend because of a misunderstanding and, those kinds of things, right? Where they thought you were giving them the stink eye and you were like, what? I was just concentrating on the clock, or whatever the case was. We get all those misunderstandings, miscommunications, misfires in our life, and those failures lead to more successful attitudes, conversations, relationships, innovation, technology, all of those things. But it's birthed from a failure. Final thing I just would want to talk to you about with this, and probably the most important thing, so I'm leaving myself a little bit extra time on this one, is that failures are the greatest producer of gratitude. Listen, success is cheap. Success is worthless without failures. Why? Because sweet success is only sweet because of the bitterness of failure, right? When you hit that rock bottom, that's what I talked about at the top of the show, at the top of the episode here, is when you hit that rock bottom and you understand the bitterness of failure, you understand the sourness of failure. That is what actually makes success sweet. In fact, without failure, it cheapens everything, and you're like, that didn't really cost me anything, so it doesn't really mean anything to me. It's why we take cheating in sports so seriously, because it robs the sweetness of success. Because without the bitterness of failure, crossing the finish line, finishing that task, finishing that, the failure of not knowing how this piece of furniture, if you've ever put a piece of furniture together from IKEA and you're like, who wrote this thing? And there's the failure of understanding the instructions and the direction and the hours that it takes, and maybe stubbing your finger and saying a few words you don't want to say around the kids, or doing those kinds of things, right? But then when you finally get that little cabinet together or nightstand together or whatever it is together, you're like, whoa, look what I did. What did you do? You overcame an impossible read Swedish instructions from IKEA, and you have sweet success of completing the project, right? I know this is a silly story, but you can apply this to many, many areas of your life. And here is the bottom line. Don't despise failures. Don't despise them. Understand. Rejoice in the midst of them, because you just know that the failure makes success that much sweeter. The difficulty of the journey makes the completion of it, or the finish line of it, that much more victorious, right? It means something to stand in the top 3, right? I'm thinking about the Olympic podium. Why is it so important for those Olympiads to stand on those podiums and be recognized as a champion or a world champion or a world Olympic champion by their country? Because of how many times they failed and they got up and practiced and didn't want to, and they had to do the hard stuff, and they cried and they grinded and they did all of these things. Why do we celebrate, the World Series or the NBA or the NFL Super Bowl? Why does all that matter? Because we know, or those athletes know, they did a lot of failures to get there, yet they endured and they stayed true and they stuck it out. And so the success is so much sweeter, so much better, so much more emotional, because we did it through failures and it didn't come easy. And just know that your failures add value and meaning to your success. They don't derail you. They don't disqualify you. They don't end your journey like maybe they feel like in the moment. Rather, they add a sweetness, and they add an emotional component, and they add an inspirational component to the success of your life. So if you're starting an adventure, or if you're on an adventure, a business adventure, a life adventure, whatever it is, push through the failures, because that's where success comes from. That is where success is born, in the failures. Hey, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Would love for you to check us out on all of our social media feeds. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, all at Tom Hamill, or you can look up Cultivated Lives. ourcultivatedlives.com. That's where you can find us and all of our resources and the book. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love for you to share this tool, this podcast, this episode with your friends, your family, as we're multiplying our audience. Until next time, I want to encourage you, find success in your failures while we live the cultivated life. Thanks for checking us out today. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on all the incredible content we have coming out. Also, we'd love to hear from you in the comment section. We read those, we respond to those as we journey together in the cultivated life.